someday I'll have money. Money isn't easy to come by. By the time it's come by, I'll be gone.
Australia's economic history is littered with booms and busts. Now there's a growing sense of apprehension that Australia's 30-year golden run without a full-blown recession could be about to end. But how do we define a recession?
It won't be a recession like we fear and have known in the past. It's certainly a recession in living standards.
Thinking that we have to slay this inflation dragon as if it was the 1970s is getting it and reading what we're experiencing very wrong.
Slamming everyday Australians just so that they can maintain a level of inflation that they want is just not good. Something needs to be done.
I've been covering the euphoric ups and the terrible downs of finance and economics since 1971. Once again, the Reserve Bank is trying to beat inflation with the blunt instrument of interest rate rises. But this time, it's different. Every time is different, of course, but this time really is unique because household debt is higher than it's ever been, to pay for houses that are more expensive than they've ever been. And at the same time, wages aren't rising much, despite the lowest unemployment in generations. The latest data showed 3.3% wages growth. I mean, are we anywhere near the sort of wage price spiral that the RBA is worried about?
I would say this is healthy wages growth. I mean, this is the wages growth that the Reserve Bank's been aiming for a decade and been unable to achieve. Unemployment is low, we'd expect to see strong wages growth, but this is nowhere near a wage price or a price-wage spiral territory.
Recessions used to mean a falling GDP or soaring unemployment, but the old rules have changed. Bottom line? Well, the correct measure of the coming recession might not be unemployed, but unhoused.
How'd you manage that?
I was in like a cricket pace.
Look, if they go up 5 times, there's a high probability I'll have to sell my house. I can't afford those sorts of interest rates.
The misery of rate rises is already bearing down in Perth's mortgage belt in the northeast of the city.
Originally, when I built the house sort of 4 years ago, I got a loan for $480,000. At that time, with the interest rates the way they were, that was quite manageable. At the lowest rate that I was able to get, my repayments were $1,950 a month. But come March, when the fixed rate's gone and I'm on variable rate, I'm looking at $2,825 a month, which is a lot of money to find, especially being a single dad on a single income.
Mark is around one of 800,000 homeowners who will fall off the fixed rate mortgage cliff this year.
I've definitely had to sort of go over and reassess my budget and see where I can scrimp and save. I got myself a roommate. It's not exactly what I was hoping to do. I mean, I sort of hoped that me and the kids would have this place to ourselves and not have to share it out. I would consider that I earn, a decent income. Never did I think I'd have to be sort of renting a room out or having to ask work to, negotiate hours and save on daycare fees so that I could actually make ends meet and pay my mortgage. I worry that the RBA are going to overcook interest rates. I worry that that means that it's going to crash the housing market. I worry that that means that I'm going to lose my job and I'm going to lose my house. And it's not a nice look. Look, I understand that inflation's going up and I understand that the Reserve Bank needs to monitor that and keep it under control. I don't think the RBA actually can see a face to a name. I want them to see what a real family looks like and see how it hurts.
Average mortgage repayments in Sydney have already gone above 40% of household income. In Melbourne, well over 30%. And that's fine for those on high salaries, but for a minimum wage earner, the 60% that's left for everything else is not enough. But how much worse is it going to get?
Well, we think that the RBA probably only has one more interest rate hike to go in this cycle.
I think there will be at least 2, if not 3 more rate hikes, and potentially 4. But there's no doubt in my mind that a cash rate of 4%, another 3 rate hikes, is what is required to slow this economy and to address the inflation risks that sit out there in the economy right now.
Do you think there should be a recession?
I do. I think that we have overcooked the economy. We do risk entrenching inflation within the economy. A recession we have to avoid. The ones that when we see unemployment go up towards 10%, where interest rates go up to, in this case, 6 or 7%.
Interest rates are a blunt tool, so this is probably the way that it's been done for a long time. So the RBA thinks that this is the only tool that they have to use. But can the RBA really control energy prices or commodity prices? No, they can't. There are other pressures on inflation that have nothing to do with interest rates.
The Reserve Bank Act of 1959 gave the central bank 3 objectives. First, the stability of the currency of Australia, and that means controlling inflation. The second objective is the maintenance of full employment, but that doesn't mean everyone having a job. It's defined as something called the NERU, the non-accelerating inflation rate of unemployment, which basically means a pool of unemployed to keep wages and therefore inflation down. It comes from another piece of jargon called the Phillips curve, which was invented in 1958 to explain the relationship between inflation and unemployment. But over the years, the Phillips curve has stopped working. Low unemployment has not pushed wages up, and the current inflation outbreak is not caused by rising wages. But we've still got the NERU as the definition of full employment. What is it? Well, I don't know for sure, but probably 4.5% to 5%. Anyway, it's more than the current unemployment rate of 3.7%. And that's why the RBA is putting up interest rates so fast, to get unemployment up to the NERU. Angela Jackson, do you think the Reserve Bank is doing a good job?
Look, I think they are obviously facing significant challenges, and they're trying to address them the best that they can. That said, clearly if you look back over the last 12 to 18 months, errors have been made.
Well, I think the board, has come up short. As we're now learning, if you take rates below a level they should be, it gets people into trouble. And it not only creates risks within the economy, but people take on long-term debts, mortgages, that become unsustainable when rates go back to normal.
The RBA's third objective is the economic prosperity and welfare of the people of Australia. So how are they doing on that? Well, it's been defined to mean 2 to 3% inflation. But take a look at your bank statement.
Split peas, some lentils, there's some seaweed cracker things.
Do we shop and not pay rent, or do we pay rent and not shop?
There's a growing number of employed Australians and mortgage holders accessing food banks like this one in Melbourne.
I had to pick up more shifts, so now I'm doing 5 days a week instead of 4. My husband had to get a second job, and it's just like quite hard for us.
So rent's about
$1,800
a month, and then bills fluctuate between $100 to $400. But I mean, income with the two of us, we're probably just over 2.5. My greatest worry is the bills will get too much, or the rent will go up.
It's a different community that we're starting to see come through. It's more working families. Every time the interest rates go up, people are having to divert more of their funds into paying off that mortgage. We've heard stories about, parents who've said they're not feeling well, so they're not then eating dinner, so that then there's enough for the children and the children don't sort of feel guilty.
It puts a lot of pressure on us as a married couple.
It does get me upset. It's just hard.
Do you think we're heading into a situation where we're going to have working poor in this country as opposed to rising unemployment?
We're seeing more and more cases, I think, of people on low incomes struggling to meet their rental payments in particular, and increasingly through this year I expect their mortgage payments. So it is a real risk, I think, across the economy.
I see Australia having a big problem with inequality in the next few years, and a key reason for that is because the level of intergenerational wealth is not moving in a way that you would normally expect, and wealth is really being accumulated by older households, and the younger households, they're not going to be able to afford the same level of assets and wealth that their parents or their grandparents might have had.
The International Monetary Fund recently said property prices in Australia may be as much as 50% above what an average household can afford as interest rates rise. Australia's property and rental markets, according to the IMF, are some of the most misaligned in the developed world. So naturally they're coming down, fast, which is fine except for the 500,000 or so young families who bought in the past 18 months. They'll be in negative equity, as well as struggling to meet repayments. In a way, the essence of the problem is that the economic rules that govern us are getting old and doddery, and so are the baby boomers like me who are still in control and who are benefiting from the booming prices. To switch analogies, it may be time to update the operating system.
The way that the RBA is forecasting and thinking about the economy is more of a traditional way of looking at some of these economic indicators that they don't correspond to the current cycle that we're at.
I think one of the hallmarks of Australia's modern society and economy has been that consistent grind higher in our living standards. And I think we've been a great success story. So I think this has been a failure of our economy, that living standards, particularly for those who are most vulnerable in our community, have taken such a radical step backwards.
The structural issues with the Australian housing market and the economy are rooted in the past, but the misery that's being caused is very modern.